To do this for you? Yeah. Folding, it turns out folding laundry is a really complicated task. And the robots can figure that out. This robot is programmed in an open source community on that ROS operating system. And what's very exciting to me is that Willow Garage is just split off into several startup companies. One of which is Rebound Robotics, or Unbound Robotics. And this small single-arm robot is going to cost $30,000. And basically can have most of the functionality of this $400,000 robot. That was in San Francisco at a cocktail party for X Prize Foundation. And I roll into this cocktail party as a robot. And there's lots of amazing people in black tie suits. And the first person I run into is Robin Williams, the comedian. And we have an amazing conversation where he just jokes about how skinny I am with my robot body. And then after finishing, there's an interesting opportunity for you right now to show up at an event as a robot and get all the attention. So I would encourage you to explore it. Robots are getting smaller and smaller. This is PhilCam. It came out a couple years ago. It's essentially a passive camera that can detect various things, and you swallow it. And it replaces colonoscopies. So instead of going up the other direction, go down this way. What's exciting for me is there are numerous companies exploring how to make this active translocation. So being able to stop in the right place, be more specific, and target areas in your body. In fact, it gets smaller and smaller. Nano-robotics. We can actually build robots out of DNA and proteins. And now we're getting to a point where we're starting to see robotics being able to enhance the types of things we're doing as well. This is the Luke arm from DECA, Dean Kamen's company, where it's essentially the same weight and strength of your normal arm and can be tied into your nerves and controlled basically like a normal arm, replacing all the functions of the disabled. He is targeting mostly military disabled who have amputees who have lost their arms and limbs, and exploring where we have a brain-computer interface to control these as well. Now, we're starting to get to the point where we're starting to see these robots enhance our lives. We very recently had a runner in the Olympics with enhanced legs, and he was able to compete at the Olympic level. Well, for robotics technology like this, we're seeing it accelerate past just replacing what we're able to do, but taking us somewhere new. The interfaces for these robotics is also starting to change. This is some amazing research where this woman, Jan, who's a quadriplegic, has not been able to basically function on her own, so she has lots of help. And now through this brain-computer interface, there's basically a surgical device placed into her brain, tapping into the neurons. She's able to fully control this robotic arm and drinking water. Lots of amazing research on this front. Now, imagine if you didn't have to have surgery to do that. There's a whole wave of really interesting, cool interface technologies. These EEG headsets that are largely for playing games and developing applications in an open source community for managing pain, doing meditation, doing a lot of interesting functions. Now imagine if you tried to control a robot with one of these, or maybe another creature. So I just love to show this because it's crazy and fun, but in Harvard a few months ago we had a researcher that took one of these headsets, it's non-invasive EEG sensors, and also put one on a rat, non-invasive, so no surgery, so just on the top. And they connected the two of them together. And the researcher on the left, he's going to watch and get a signal. And that signal from his brain then gets sent to the rat. And the rat is unconscious. It's anesthetized, right? So it's unconscious. This is what happens. So the researcher is watching the screen, and then at some point he gets this signal. Did you see that? He moves the rat's tail. Right? Sort of weird and freaky, right? And I have a theory that the rat had to be unconscious, because if not, who's in control? Some other researchers thought the exact same thing. So what did they do? They wired each other together. So the researcher on the left is watching a video game where he has to press the space bar every so often to play the game. And that signal gets sent to another friend, again, non-invasive, no surgery, to a friend who's conscious this time. Unfortunately, I don't have a video of it, but you can go online and look at the University of Washington research. And what happens is the guy that's getting the signal, he's sitting there, and he's doing this, he's playing the game. And when afterwards they asked, what was that like? What did it feel like? And he essentially said, it was like a nervous twitch. I couldn't really stop it. What else could, if you didn't think we were robots before being controlled by something else, it's coming soon. Now there's a bunch of really interesting companions in our lives that we use. Anybody have a pet? A dog or a cat or others? Your pet's job very soon may be replaced by a robot. There are a lot of really good, so a really interesting open source drag and drop interface.
Are you ready to support this board? Sure.
Whatever happens. That lady. Now watching where she's going. So notice how he falls. He knows how to not get hurt. And then figure out how to get back up.
Yeah, dressed.
Anyone have a toddler? Anyone have a small child? Did that remind you of a small child sort of trying to learn how to walk and falling over? Its capabilities, its speed, it's kind of like a 2-year-old toddler. But they're growing up really quickly. There's other companions too, right? This is an interesting new area of innovation that's happening in robotics, where a ton of money is propelling new innovation and research, which I believe is much better than guns and warfare, but it's still a little icky and weird, but actually very important. So sexual health is actually a very important part of our lives as humans, and as we get older, as we get disabled, there are people with impairments and others that also have the same sexual needs, where robotics actually can play a role in those areas. So this is where there are interesting new areas for relationships with robots. Now, back to interesting fun robots. So robots don't have to be all hard and cold. They can be soft and warm and squishy. Other labs, a company in San Francisco, Saul Griffith designs a bunch of robots using textiles and pneumatics, and can replace a lot of basic functions that we do. The big blue robot there is actually just something he built for his kid. He can have like 6 kids walk down the road on this big. So robots don't have to be all hard and cold. They can be soft and warm and squishy. Other labs, a company in San Francisco, Saul Griffith designs a bunch of robots using textiles and pneumatics, and can replace a lot of basic functions that we do. The big blue robot there is actually just something he built for his kid. He can have like 6 kids walk down the road on this big. Launched a competition a couple of years ago called the Robotics Challenge. They put up $2 million for developing a robot that can go into a disaster scenario like Fukushima and clear the way, find patients, and deal with the emergency situation. Because that's a situation that you don't want to send in a human, because it's very deadly for us. So what they built was this robot. Actually, can we turn the sound down a little bit? Sorry about that. The pet man in the Atlas is an autonomous robot that can walk through an obstacle course, can interact with the environment, and these are completely autonomous. We just said, okay, we want you to go to the end of this course. Now get there. And they're putting obstacles in front of it, which in a disaster scenario, you can imagine things falling from buildings, and the robot having a little flying helicopter and the remote control things. They're amazing, right? This is technology that 15 years ago was impossible. At this scale, at this size, not possible. Not possible for like $2 million, not possible. But today, we've got a 20 that was inspired, it's very inspired by biology, or biomimetics. So copying what we do in biology and making it into robotics. So they saw the dragonfly, and what they built was this absolutely beautiful robotic creature that has 4 independent wings. Each one of them is angle, adjust, and frequency controlled, and all independent. So this flying creature can actually perform extremely complicated maneuvers because it has such capabilities. We could never control this type of thing, so it's required to have very complicated artificial intelligence control systems to manage this kind of engineering structure. I would bet that they spent $1 million at least to develop this kind of capabilities in such a beautiful engineering structure. Somebody else saw this and was inspired by it, some smart engineer. And he said, hey, I bet I could build one of those. Everyone know Kickstarter? You guys know Kickstarter or Indiegogo? So there's crowdsourcing campaigns. So if you have an idea to build something, a video out front, they didn't even know we were here, what we were doing today. They were just out there filming a commercial with this flying UAV. DIY Drones builds the hardware, and then they open source the software development with tens of thousands of software developers that are taking these drones and doing. This is Vijay Kumar from the University of Pennsylvania. One of many, many things they've done. This is a whole fleet of autonomous flying vehicles working in concert. It would be very hard to remote control all of these, and so they're all sensing one another, sensing where they're at with respect to the instruments, and basically playing. There's a lot of research going into figuring out how to use swarms of robots to build things, to take things apart. And the capabilities of each of these robots is control that. There's just no way. And the fact that these two are working together and able to do such a complicated thing is a good example of where that capability is today. Now, there's another side, the dark side of these flying things. Turns out, this is the weapon of choice today in warfare. We kill a lot of people with semi-autonomous UAVs. The drone Predator is the biggest one. There are some new drone capabilities that are virtually fully autonomous. But the good news is that the DoD, or the Department of Defense of the United States, has made a very clear statement about robots to kill people without confirmation from a human. So these drones will fly out on their own, identify a target on their own, and then send a message back. Target identified. Should we shoot? And a human somewhere says, shoot, or don't shoot. Somewhat comforting that we've not allowed robots to just go ahead and kill us all by themselves. But imagine a scenario where we have two robots